Hello, good afternoon everyone. And this video I'll start working with you on using Excel charts to summarize marketing data. So we're going to start slow and easy. We're going to work with different types of charts. Here I have a list of 10 different types of charts. And as you know, data visualization is a very important skill for consultants, for presentations, and as you can see in the first slide, it is very well known that a picture is really worth 1,000 words. So let's get started. We're going to start with the first task, which is using a combination chart and secondary access. We're going to work with Chapter 2, Charts Students. So here's the Chapter 2 charts, and as you can see, the file is very organized. It consists of 10 different sheets, starting with sheet 1 about the combination chart. Then in this video also I'm going to talk about the secondary access. So we're going to work with sheet 1 and sheet 2 in this video. So in this video we're going to talk about what we call it a combination chart and when do we use it. Alright, so a combination chart is basically a chart that we usually use when we are plotting the same maybe data but in different states. For example, you have the monthly sales, but there's actual versus predicted or versus targeted. So, or versus budgeted. So it is the same sales data, but you have two different types or states of it. So for example, if you plot this data simply by selecting it, insert, and because it is a kind of time series data, it has a month, we're going to select a line, a chart. We're going to end up with a chart like this, and then we're going to take actual versus target. Even though this is a very accepted chart type, and I always tell you that time series data is basically plotted in line charts, but for visualization sake, for easy visualization, we are going to use a combination data chart. And a combination chart is a chart that combines two different chart types. So we will have one in bar charts and one in line, so that you can easily see, especially when you have a targeted data, you can easily see whether you have reached the target or not. So if you have a certain performance target, especially for performance target, then we prefer to have the performance target as a line. In fact, if you have taken my Tableau course, with Tableau, we use what we call it a bullet chart. So you will not have a continuous line like that, but rather for each month you will have just a line. So it is a separate line for each month, and it will show you whether you have arrived at that line or not. So have you actually met the target by bypassing that line, or are you below the target? And how much below are you? Of course, visually you can see that January here actual has not met the target. The target is higher. Over here, actual has met the target. Over here, actual haven't met the target. You could actually see that. But it could be easier for you if you can plot a bar for each month. To do so, we need to transform one of these into a bar chart. And the one that we're going to transform is the actual and not the target. And for the reason that, as I told you earlier, especially if you took my Tableau class, we are going to put the line like it is like a finish line. It's like you are in a race, a running race. So you have a finish line. So that is the target. So we're going to keep the target as a line. So imagine it being this way. I don't want you to really memorize things, but through analogies that I strive to bring into the class, I hope that you don't have to really memorize things. Format data series. Was it format data series? Wait a minute. So we selected, right click and choose change series type. So please be careful. So we right click and change series chart type. So the chart type I would like to change. I would keep it as combo, as you can see here. And for actual, I would like actual to be a column bar. So it will look something like this. So this is exactly what I would like to see. If I would like a secondary axis, I can click here, secondary axis. What is a secondary axis? A secondary axis is another axis on this side. A secondary axis will be an axis for the actual on the left side and an axis for the target on the right side. Over here, it doesn't make sense to have a secondary axis because both of them are in the same currency, the same unit, and within the same range. As you can see, starting from 0 to 1,800, almost 1,600 for both. So it doesn't really, it's not necessary really. So I'm not going to just give a secondary axis, and the secondary axis actually here for target. The other one was a secondary axis for actual. It doesn't really, it's not necessary really. So now we have this chart. So this is the chart of, as you can see here, we should give it a name. So we're going to give it line and bar. I'm not going to tell it much better. I'm going to say, let's give it a name like actual versus targeted sales. Sorry. And then if you want to make it bold, go home and make it bold. If you want to change the font, you can do so too. And here a bit centralize it. And in fact, I am the kind of person who likes borders. So I always like to take a look at a border and put it as a solid line and have it in kind of black or darker shade. It does make a difference. Look at the difference now. Looks more professional, more sharp, and nicer. So over here you can see which months, easily you can see which months have hit the target or not. While in the previous line graph, as you can see here, it is really difficult for you to pinpoint which month is which and which the beginning of the line, which end of the line, and so forth. But over here you can easily see that we have 2 months that we haven't met. Actually, it's 3 months we haven't met target. January is one of them. We haven't touched the target. May and July. So I urge you to use the combo, the combination chart when you have actual versus targeted. It's easy. Now let's talk about secondary axis. Secondary axis, as I showed you earlier, could be used here, but it's not really necessary because both are the same, within the same range, the max and the minimum, and they are the same unit. But what happens if you have data like this? You have revenue in currency and units in 2 digits, and currency and revenue in like not 6 but 5 digits, or 6 digits. So if you plot this data, and let's do it together, what happens is you're going to have a very flat line. You know what? Let's use the design here. The design, you activate it if this chart is selected. So you need to select this chart so that you can hit design. And let's put it this way. That's really nice and lovely. Look at this. What happens here is that I was mistaken this by the x-axis. It is almost flat. And I don't think this is exactly what we want. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to you can change series type and add here a secondary excuse me, add a secondary axis, and then put the units, actually add the secondary axis for the revenue and put the units here in a bar chart. This is the recommendation. So you will have here the revenue in line, and you can tell that this is the revenue. You don't need to write here revenue on the axis because it has the currency already. So you don't really need to, it's self-explanatory, right? And you see what I'm trying to do here? I think this is 0. So, yeah. You can resize this if you want. Can you? No, you can. You can just a little bit move it. This is the max that you can do with it. So in any case, here's the units. Let's say that you want to add an axis title. So let's say that you want to add here units. Do you see how I added it? But it's so tiny, right? So I'm going to move this a little bit inside and this a little bit outside here, a little bit, and add units here. This is the production units, right? So that is nice. Go again to the chart. This is under design again, and the chart axes titles, and you have now secondary. Wait a minute. We do more axes. Okay. So over here you have more options for the axes, but I am trying to vertical alignment, okay, text direction, okay. I am trying to add a title here. In format axes, this won't happen. The maximum that you could do is to start from a certain range. Let's go back again by selecting the chart, design, chart elements. Here, secondary vertical. So now if you want to add, for example here, revenue was it, or sales, or revenue, then you can add it. Now let's say that you have revenue and then you have profit and the cost is very high. So maybe the revenue is in millions but the profit is in 5 digits. In this case you can also opt for this compo kind of chart with a secondary axis, and both axes will be in currency. So in this case you can add here the secondary axis title from the add chart title, axis title, and you can add the secondary vertical from there. All right, let's call this a chart revenue and production units. Make sure that you are consistent. If you start with capitals, keep it this way. So as you can notice here, the higher the units, the higher the revenue, the lower the units, the lower the revenue. There's consistency, so there isn't much defects. So it's not as if you produced a lot of units as in the line chart, and then the revenue wasn't matching the trend. So this doesn't mean, please make sure that you know that this doesn't mean that the number of units here is actually equal to this big huge number. No, but there's a consistency. as you can see here. So there's a consistency. As this is increasing, this is increasing. As this is decreasing, this is decreasing. So you can see how the correlation is. All right, I am not going to make the video long. So in this video, we talked about a combination chart. A combination chart when you have to have two different data series and you think it is easier for you to visualize the data if you right-click on one of the lines and change the series chart type, and then from the combo option for the combination chart you can also add a secondary axis. You can do that when necessary. In this case it's not really necessary. It might be confusing if you do add it, so maybe don't opt for it. But over here, when you have 5 digits versus 2 digits, it is absolutely necessary to have a secondary axis. And if you have revenue versus cost, for example, or revenue versus profits, it maybe also makes sense that you over here, you can easily write revenues and versus profits on the other side. So this is what we covered in this video.